Imagine standing at the altar, moments away from saying I do, when you discover your millionaire fiancé has been sleeping with someone you trust most, your own mother. Instead of walking away, she turned the wedding into the ultimate payback. And the shocking twist? She didn't leave. She stayed. Why? Before I begin the story, I'd like to say a quick prayer for you, my dear family. May your days be filled with peace, your heart with joy, and your steps guided by light. Amen. If you're happy to be here, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a story. The wedding invitations had been embossed with gold, thick cardstock that gleamed under the chandelier light. They sat in a neat stack on the marble counter of her fiancé's penthouse kitchen, a symbol of everything that was supposed to be beautiful, flawless, and eternal. Amara Lawson traced her fingers over one of them, her chest tightening with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Mrs. Amara Sterling. The words looked unreal. For months, she had rehearsed saying them in the mirror, smiling at the reflection of a woman who had finally stepped into the life she had always dreamed of. A life of love, stability, and luxury. Things that had once felt like fairy tales told to other girls, but not for her. Her fiancé, Damien Sterling, was everything a woman was supposed to want. 34 tall, devastatingly handsome in a way that drew stares even in rooms full of powerful men. He carried himself with the self-assurance of someone who had built empires and conquered storms. His name alone commanded attention. His wealth opened doors Amara didn't even know existed until she met him. To the outside world, he was a dream. To her, he was her future. And yet, as she stood in that kitchen with the city lights spilling in through the glass walls behind her, a shadow passed through her chest. Weddings were supposed to be simple things, flowers, vows, promises whispered in front of family and friends. But with Damien, nothing was ever simple. Thinking too hard again, his voice came from behind her, smooth, amused. Amara turned, her lips parting into a smile she didn't have to fake. Not yet. He looked devastatingly perfect, even in something as casual as an open white shirt and black slacks. His sleeves were rolled up, exposing strong forms that bore the faintest trace of veins. He was holding 2 glasses of wine, the dark liquid glinting ruby under the light. I'm just taking it all in, Amara said softly. He came closer, handed her a glass, and tilted his head in that charming way of his. You deserve all of it. Every detail, every moment. This wedding, it's going to be unforgettable. She laughed lightly, unaware of how prophetic his words would become. Unforgettable sounds good, just not disastrous. Damien's smile widened, a flash of white teeth. With me by your side, nothing could ever be disastrous. At that moment, she almost believed him. The wedding planning had consumed her life for weeks. Between fittings for her custom gown, meetings with florists, seating charts that looked more like political negotiations than family arrangements, Amara often found herself staring at the ceiling late at night, wondering if all brides felt this dizzy. Her mother, Celeste Lawson, had been a constant presence through it all. Too constant. Celeste was the kind of woman people noticed in any room, not because of loudness, but because of a quiet elegance that demanded attention. At 46, she looked closer to 30, her skin still smooth, her figure still enviable. Amara had grown up watching men's gazes linger on her mother a little too long, sensing the invisible aura of danger around a woman who knew exactly how beautiful she was. Celeste had raised Amara mostly on her own, scraping together a living after Amara's father walked out when she was 8. Their bond had been forged in hardship, but it had never been without cracks. Celeste was loving, yes, but also ambitious in ways that sometimes unsettled Amara. She wanted her daughter to succeed, but she also wanted proximity to success herself. It was Celeste who had encouraged Amara not to hesitate when Damien first pursued her. Men like him don't come twice in a lifetime, she had said, her eyes sharp with something Amara couldn't quite name. Don't let nerves or doubt ruin this for you. At the time, Amara thought it was just a mother's protective wisdom. Later, she would wonder if it had been something else entirely. The first time Damien met Celeste, it had been at a dinner Amara arranged to introduce them. She remembered how her mother had walked into the restaurant, wearing a dark green dress that clung to her in ways that made heads turn. Amara had brushed off the tension she felt when Damien's eyes had lingered a second too long. Men looked. It was inevitable. What mattered was who they chose. Damien had chosen her, or so she thought. Weeks before the wedding, Amara sat at her vanity table, her phone pressed between her shoulder and ear as she adjusted a pearl earring. Her best friend, Imani, was rattling on about bachelorette party plans. "Girl, I swear if you let this man give you some boring little dinner, I'm kidnapping you myself," Imani laughed. "Vegas, Miami, I don't care. You need one last wild night before you tie yourself down." Amara rolled her eyes, smiling. "I don't need wild. I need peace." Imani snorted. "Peace? With Damien Sterling? Honey, you're marrying into chaos. That man's life is a storm with champagne bubbles on top. Don't fool yourself." Amara laughed it off, but her friend's words stayed with her. A storm with champagne bubbles. That sounded about right. The night that would begin unraveling everything started innocently. Damien was out of town on business, and Celeste had come over to help Amara sort through gifts that had already begun arriving. They sat on the living room floor surrounded by ribbon and silver wrapping paper. "You really are marrying into another world," Celeste said, her tone thoughtful, as she unwrapped a crystal vase that looked like it belonged in a museum. "I know," Amara admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm in a dream, like I'll wake up and—" "Don't you dare talk like that," Celeste cut in sharply. Then she softened, reaching out to squeeze Amara's hand. "You've worked hard. You've been through enough. You deserve this happiness. Don't sabotage it with doubt." It was a strange choice of words. Sabotage. As if Amara herself were the enemy of her own joy. She brushed it off, unaware that real sabotage was already creeping its way into her perfect plans. The first hint came the next week, in the form of a hushed conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Amara had gone to Damien's penthouse early, letting herself in with the key he had given her. She heard voices drifting from the kitchen, Damien's deep timbre, and her mother's softer, familiar lilt. "This can't ever come out," Damien was saying, his tone urgent. "I know," Celeste's voice replied, low and steady. "Believe me, I know what's at stake." Amara froze in the hallway, her heart lurching violently. Her mother's voice in Damien's home, without her, talking about secrets. She forced her feet to move, announcing herself with a bright, "Damien? I didn't know you were back already." The silence that followed was telling. When she entered the kitchen, her mother stood by the counter with a glass of water. Damien across from her with his arms folded. Both of them looked too composed, too careful. Her stomach twisted, but she smiled anyway. That night, Amara lay awake in Damien's bed, staring at the ceiling while his even breathing filled the room beside her. Her mind replayed the conversation, the way they had looked at each other when she walked in. What couldn't ever come out? And why was her mother in his penthouse when she wasn't there? Questions clawed at her, but she shoved them aside. She told herself she was imagining things, letting stress get the better of her. After all, she was about to marry the man of her dreams. Her mother would never, would she? The morning light spilled gently across Amara's bedroom, brushing her skin with warmth she didn't feel inside. Sleep had been impossible after the strange exchange she overheard between Damien and her mother. She had risen before dawn, brewed coffee she didn't drink, and sat in silence watching the world outside her window move on as if nothing in her life had shifted. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Damien. *morning, love. Meeting starts early. Don't stress today. I'll call you tonight, *. Short, Sweet. Deceptively normal. Amara stared at the words until they blurred. Her fiancé was acting as though nothing had happened. Maybe she should too. Maybe she was imagining shadows where there were none. Still, unease lingered like smoke in her lungs. Later that afternoon, she met her best friend Imani at a small cafe near downtown. The air smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, chatter bouncing off the walls. Imani slid into the booth opposite her, oversized sunglasses pushed into her hair. "You look like hell," Imani said, without preamble. Amara laughed weakly. "Thanks, bestie." "Spill. Don't even try lying." Amara hesitated, fingers tracing circles on her mug. I think Damien and my mom are hiding something." Imani raised a brow, her voice dropping low. "Like what?" "I don't know. I heard them talking in his penthouse. She was there without me, and they said something about how it can't ever come out." Imani's eyes widened. "Amara, that's not nothing." "I know, but it could be anything. Maybe they were planning some surprise for the wedding. Or, Imani interrupted firmly. "They're hiding something you deserve to know. Don't gaslight yourself. When your gut tells you something's wrong, listen." Amara swallowed hard. The knot in her stomach tightened. That night, she called her mother. Celeste's voice came through smooth and calm, as though she had nothing in the world to hide. "Amara, darling, how are you holding up? You sound tired." "I'm fine," Amara lied. Then she added quickly, "I stopped by Damien's the other day." "You were there? Why?" The silence on the other end lasted a second too long. Then Celeste laughed lightly. "Oh, that. I was just dropping off something he'd asked me to pick up. Invitations, I think." Her tone was so convincing, so effortless, that Amara almost believed her. Almost. Still, when she hung up, unease lingered. The kind that burrows deep, waiting for the right moment to explode. The following week brought fittings, tastings, rehearsals. Every day, Amara played her part, smiling, laughing, nodding at floral arrangements and place cards. Outwardly, she was the glowing bride. Inwardly, suspicion gnawed at her like termites beneath polished wood. Damien, for his part, was attentive but distracted. He took calls at odd hours. He often looked distant, like his mind was elsewhere even as his hand rested warmly on hers. Amara told herself it was business. It was always business with Damien. Yet every time his phone buzzed and he excused himself, she wondered, who was it really? 2 weeks before the wedding, the cracks widened. Amara had gone to her mother's house unannounced, hoping for comfort. She let herself in with the spare key Celeste had given her years ago. The house smelled faintly of lavender and wine. She was halfway down the hall when she heard it. The low murmur of Damien's voice. Her blood turned to ice. She froze, pressing herself against the wall, straining to hear. "We agreed this wouldn't get messy," Damien was saying. His voice was low, tense. "I know," her mother replied. "But she's not stupid, Damien. If she figures it out—" "She won't," he snapped. Then softer, "She can't." Amara's world tilted. She stumbled back, silently, her pulse hammering in her ears. She wanted to storm into the room, demand answers, scream until the walls shook. But her body betrayed her. She fled, out the door into her car, down the street with tears blurring her vision. That night, Amara locked herself in her apartment. She curled on the couch with a blanket, shaking as the storm outside mirrored the one inside her. Her phone buzzed again and again. Damien, then her mother, then Damien again. She didn't answer. When the calls stopped, the silence was worse. It meant they knew she knew. Amara pressed her palms to her eyes, whispering, "God, please tell me I'm wrong." But deep down, she already knew the truth. The next day, Damien showed up at her door. He looked perfect, as always, hair neatly styled, suit tailored to precision. Yet his eyes betrayed him, restless, searching. "Amara," he said softly when she opened the door. "We need to talk." Her throat was tight. "Do we?" He sighed, stepping inside uninvited. "I know what you think you heard, but it's not what you imagine." "Then explain it to me." Her voice cracked, half plea, half command. Damien hesitated, his jaw clenched. "There are mistakes, things that happened before you and I were serious, things I regret." Amara's chest constricted. "With my mother?" The silence that followed was worse than any words. His eyes darted away, guilt flashing across his face like lightning. Her knees nearly gave out. She sank onto the couch, her body trembling. "Oh my God, Damien. I swear it was before I proposed," he said quickly, desperately. "I didn't know where we were heading yet. It was stupid, weak. I ended it immediately." Her mother, her own mother. The betrayal sliced deeper than she could bear. That evening, Amara drove aimlessly through the city. Neon lights blurred past. Her thoughts spiraled. Images of Damien's hands on her mother, his lips against her skin. Images she couldn't erase no matter how hard she tried. And yet, beneath the rage and heartbreak, a dangerous thought clawed at her. She still loved him. That truth was the cruelest of all. She spent the next days in silence. No calls returned. No messages answered. She floated through fittings and appointments like a ghost. Everyone around her assumed it was pre-wedding stress. Only she knew the storm inside her chest. Until one night, staring at her reflection in the mirror, Amara whispered, "No, you don't get to break me." And in that moment, a new fire ignited in her. She would not cancel the wedding. She would not run. She would walk down that aisle. And she would make them both regret underestimating her. The days leading up to the wedding turned into theater. Every morning, Amara woke up with a pit in her stomach. And every morning she painted on the same smile, adjusted her veil in the mirror during fittings, and told vendors how perfect everything was. To anyone watching, she was the radiant bride-to-be. Inside, she was fire and ash, carrying the unbearable knowledge of what Damien and her mother had done. But beneath that smile, Amara was building something dangerous. A performance, a reckoning. She started with small, deliberate steps. First, she contacted the wedding planner, insisting on final approval of all seating arrangements, speeches, and music. "It's important to me," she told her with disarming sweetness. The planner, used to demanding brides, complied without question. Next, Amara asked the videographer to set up live streaming for parts of the ceremony. "Family overseas want to watch," she explained. What she didn't mention was her plan for that footage. Then came the vows. Tradition dictated Damien and Amara would recite carefully written promises to one another. Amara smiled brightly during rehearsal, nodding along as Damien read his practice lines. Asterisk, "I vow to honor you, protect you, cherish you, forever and always." Asterisk, she clapped politely. But at home, she sat up at night, rewriting her own vows, not with love, but with sharpened words veiled in poetry. A speech that would double as both a dagger and a shield. Imani was the only one she let in on fragments of the truth. Over lunch one afternoon, Imani leaned forward, whispering urgently, "So what's the plan? You're not seriously going through with it, are you?" Amara stirred her iced tea calmly. "Oh, I'm going through with it." Imani nearly dropped her fork. "Girl, don't worry. I'm not marrying him blindly. The wedding will still happen, but not the way they expect. Think of it as theater." Imani's eyes widened, equal parts fear and admiration. "You're scary when you get like this." Amara smirked, though her heart still ached. "Good. Let them be scared too." At home, Amara practiced her expressions in the mirror. She rehearsed the exact smile she would wear when walking down the aisle, the exact tilt of her head during vows, the precise pause before delivering the lines that would slice Damien open without shedding a drop of blood. But even as she plotted, her emotions betrayed her. At night, she cried herself to sleep. In the quiet moments, she replayed Damien's laughter, the warmth of his arms, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. Love and rage warred within her like predators locked in the same cage. She hated him. She loved him. And most maddening of all, she wanted to hurt him, yet couldn't bear the thought of letting him go. One evening, Damien showed up unexpectedly with dinner. He let himself in, carrying a bag of takeout from her favorite type place. "Thought you might not have eaten," he said gently, setting the food on the table. Amara's chest tightened. He looked so normal, so heartbreakingly familiar. She forced a smile. "You remember my order?" "Always," he said softly. They ate in silence, chopsticks clicking against cartons. Damien watched her carefully, as though searching for a crack in her mask. Finally, he spoke. "I know you don't trust me right now. I don't blame you, but I need you to believe one thing. I love you. That's the only truth that matters." Her throat closed. Tears pricked at the back of her eyes. She wanted to scream, to ask how love could coexist with betrayal. Instead, she nodded faintly, playing the part. When he reached across the table to squeeze her hand, she let him. And in that moment, Amara realized her revenge would cut deepest if he never saw it coming. The week of the wedding arrived. Guests flew in from across the country. Her mother hosted dinners and smiled like nothing had happened. Damien worked long hours tying up business before the honeymoon, and Amara, calm and radiant on the outside, moved the chess pieces into place. She requested a small microphone for her vows, so the guests in the back can hear. She asked the planner to ensure the projector was tested for the slideshow of couple photos. She arranged with the DJ to play a certain song at a certain time. Every piece was critical. Every detail, a weapon disguised as tradition. On the eve of the rehearsal dinner, Amara stood before her mirror in her apartment, holding the folded paper of her vows. She whispered them aloud, testing their weight. "Damien, when I said yes to you, I believed I was stepping into forever. But forever has shadows, doesn't it? Sometimes shadows we don't expect." Her reflection stared back, eyes glistening but unbroken. She folded the paper, tucked it into her clutch, and smiled coldly. Tomorrow the stage would be set, and on the day the world expected to see her as the broken bride, she would rise as something far more dangerous. The bride who knew. The morning of her wedding dawned crisp and golden. Sunlight streamed through Amara's window, scattering across the silk robe she wore as she sat before her vanity. The reflection staring back at her looked serene, eyes subtly lined, lips painted a delicate shade of rose. But beneath that calm surface, her heart thrashed like a trapped bird. She touched the pearl earrings on the vanity, a gift from her mother last month. They sparkled prettily in the morning light, tainted now by betrayal. For a moment, she considered leaving them behind. But then she thought, no. Let her cede me, or them. Let her choke on the irony, The bridal suite bustled with energy. Bridesmaids laughed as they flitted around, sipping champagne, adjusting curls, and squealing over last-minute details. Her best friend Imani stayed close to Amara, a steady anchor in the whirl of excitement. "Are you ready?" Imani whispered, eyes searching Amara's face for cracks. Amara smiled, her mask flawless. "I've never been more ready in my life." Imani's lips tightened, but she said nothing more. Meanwhile, in the groomsmen's suite, Damien buttoned his tuxedo jacket, his reflection tall and composed. But his eyes betrayed him, a flicker of nerves, a shadow of regret. His best man clapped his shoulder. "Man, you've got it all. Money, the company, and now the girl. You're living the dream." Damien forced a smile. The dream. If only they knew the cost. The ceremony venue glittered like something pulled from fairy tale. A grand ballroom transformed into a garden of roses and lilies, golden arches framing the altar, chandeliers sparkling overhead. Guests filled the seats in hushed awe, murmuring about the union of wealth, beauty, and promise they were about to witness. Amara's mother, Celeste, swept into the hall like royalty. Her gown shimmered silver, her smile wide and gracious. She moved among guests effortlessly, every inch the proud mother of the bride. Only Amara noticed the tension beneath her perfect mask, the slight twitch of her fingers, the careful way she avoided her daughter's gaze. Back in the bridal suite, Amara slipped into her gown. The fabric hugged her frame, a cascade of satin and lace that made her look ethereal, untouchable. Her bridesmaids gasped in delight. "You look like a queen," one whispered. Amara's lips curved. Asterisk, a queen. Yes. And today, the queen would deliver judgment. Asterisk. The music swelled. Guests rose to their feet. The doors swung open. Amara stepped into the aisle, every step measured, every breath deliberate. Damien stood at the altar, his eyes fixed on her with something between awe and desperation. For a moment, her heart faltered. He looked so handsome, so achingly hers. But then she caught sight of her mother in the front row, beaming as though she hadn't stolen the one thing sacred to her daughter. The fire in Amara's chest roared back to life. She walked forward, veil glistening, eyes steady. Today was no ordinary wedding. Today was theater. The officiant's voice rose, words drifting like smoke through the hall. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union." Amara's pulse drummed in her ears. The crowd blurred at the edges. Her focus sharpened only on two faces. Damien, tense yet hopeful. Celeste, radiant yet guilty. When the time came for vows, Damien spoke first. His voice cracked slightly, but his words carried the charm of practiced sincerity. "Amara, from the moment I saw you, I knew my life would never be the same. You've shown me love, strength, and grace beyond anything I deserve. Today I vow to cherish you, to honor you, to build with you a life full of light and joy." Gasps and sighs fluttered through the audience. He smiled faintly, eyes shining. And then it was Amara's turn. She stepped forward, holding the microphone lightly. For a heartbeat, she let silence settle. Then she began, her voice clear and melodic. "Damien, when you asked me to marry you, I thought I was walking into forever. And I still believe that. But forever, I've learned, comes with shadows." A murmur rippled through the guests. Damien stiffened. Celeste's smile faltered. Amara continued, eyes sweeping the room. "Shadows we don't expect. Shadows that come from the people we love most." The audience leaned forward, captivated. Her words were soft, poetic, but razor-sharp beneath the surface. She turned back to Damien, her smile gentle. "And yet here I stand. Because love isn't about pretending shadows don't exist. It's about seeing them and deciding whether you can still walk forward." A stunned hush fell over the hall. Damien's jaw tightened. Celeste's hands trembled in her lap. Amara lowered the microphone, her vow complete, but her eyes, steady, unflinching, told both of them this was only the beginning. The officiant moved on, rattling through formalities. Rings were exchanged, vows sealed. Guests clapped, tears streamed. To them, it was the perfect wedding, overflowing with emotion and beauty. Only 3 people in that room knew the truth. This ceremony was not a union. It was a stage, and the real show hadn't even begun. The reception followed, golden lights spilling across tables laden with champagne and roses. Laughter bubbled, glasses clinked, music soared. Amara glided through it all, a vision of grace, greeting guests with warmth, while inside she prepared for the second act of her revenge. She had arranged a slideshow of photographs, a tradition meant to honor the couple's journey. But Amara had carefully edited the sequence, inserting certain images only Damien and Celeste would recognize. A hand brushing a wrist too intimately. A shadowy figure slipping into a room. Not explicit enough for guests to understand, but sharp enough to send daggers into guilty hearts. As the pictures rolled across the projector, Damien's smile faltered. Celeste's face blanched, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Amara, standing at the head table, lifted her glass calmly to toast. To love, she said, her voice steady, and to truth. The crowd erupted in cheers. Only Damien and Celeste understood the venom laced within. By the time the dance floor opened, whispers swirled like smoke. Some guests had caught the strange tension, the unspoken drama buzzing beneath the glittering surface. But Amara danced with Damien anyway, their bodies pressed close, their smiles dazzling for the cameras. "Why are you doing this?" Damien whispered in her ear as they swayed. Her smile never wavered. "Because I want you to feel what I felt." His grip on her waist tightened. "Amara?" "Shoo," she breathed, her lips near his ear. "Smile for the crowd, Damien. This is just the beginning." The ballroom glowed under chandeliers, strings of golden light reflecting in champagne flutes. Guests laughed. The orchestra played a lively tune, and servers glided across the polished floor carrying silver trays. From the outside, it was flawless, a celebration fit for royalty. But Amara felt the storm building. At the head table, she sat beside Damien, their hands loosely linked for appearances. His smile was picture perfect, but she could feel the tension humming through his palm. Celeste sat across the room, her laughter pitched too high, her gestures too animated. She was playing her role as the radiant mother of the bride, but her eyes darted toward Amara again and again, searching for clues, waiting for the axe to fall. And Amara let her wait. Dinner passed with polite chatter. Toast came next. Damien's best man rose first, recounting childhood pranks, college escapades, and the moment Damien confessed, he'd found the one. The crowd roared with laughter, raising glasses to toast. Then Celeste stood. "My daughter," she began, voice warm, "has always been extraordinary. From the moment she was born, I knew she was destined for greatness. And today, seeing her marry Damien, I feel like all of life's struggles have been worth it." Her words were polished, her delivery flawless. Guests dabbed at their eyes, but Amara sat motionless, her expression neutral. Every word from her mother's lips striking her as bitter irony. Asterisk, struggles worth it? Even the struggle of stealing your own daughter's fiancé? Asterisk. When Celeste finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Amara raised her glass, her smile polite, but her eyes locked with her mother's, sharp as broken glass. Then she stood. The ballroom hushed instantly. The bride had the floor. She let the silence stretch, savoring the suspense, before she spoke. "I want to thank everyone for being here today. This marriage, this union means everything to me." Damien shifted beside her, watching her warily. Celeste froze, her knuckles white around her glass. Amara continued, her tone smooth, almost casual. "When two people decide to marry, it's not just about love. It's about trust. It's about building something sacred, even when shadows threaten it." A ripple of murmurs passed through the guests. She smiled, a radiant smile that lit the room, but froze Damien's blood. "So tonight I toast not only to love, but to truth, to the kind of truth that sets us free, even when it burns." Her glass lifted. The guests, bewildered but obedient, echoed her toast. Damien swallowed hard. Celeste's chest rose and fell in sharp breaths. The slideshow played next. At first, the images were harmless. Amara and Damien at the beach. Damien proposing under a shower of fairy lights. Childhood photos of Amara with missing teeth and braids. The guests cooed, laughing and clapping. Then the images shifted. A blurry photo of Damien and Celeste at a gala, his hand hovering just a moment too long at the small of her back. Another shot of them slipping out of a hotel lobby, their faces turned away from the camera. A third image, grainy but clear enough. Damien's silhouette, standing too close to Celeste in the dim glow of a restaurant. The guests stirred uneasily. Whispers hissed across the tables. Damien's face drained of color. Celeste's jaw dropped, her hands trembling in her lap. Amara sat still, her smile serene. The screen went black. The slideshow ended. Silence filled the hall, thick and suffocating. "Excuse me," Celeste whispered, rising abruptly. Her chair scraped against the marble floor. She hurried toward the exit, her heels clicking like gunshots. Damien remained frozen, his fists clenched under the table. The crowd shifted, confused, unsettled, buzzing with speculation. Amara stood slowly, her gown sweeping the floor as she approached the microphone once more. "I suppose you weren't expecting that," she said softly, almost teasingly. Gasps rippled. But marriages aren't fairy tales. They're real, messy, sometimes ugly. Her gaze swept across the room, finally settling on Damien. "The question is, when truth shows its teeth, do we run, or do we face it?" Her voice was steady, her eyes locked on him, daring him to answer. Damien rose. He walked to the microphone, his steps deliberate, his face pale but composed. He took it from her hand, his voice rough. "I owe all of you the truth," he began. The ballroom stilled. "Months ago I made a mistake, a betrayal, one that should have destroyed everything I love." And yet he looked at Amara, his voice breaking. "She's still here." The crowd erupted into shocked whispers. "I don't deserve a forgiveness," Damien continued, his throat tight. "But I swear from this day forward, I will spend every breath proving I'm worthy of the chance she's given me." He set the microphone down, turning to Amara. His eyes glistened raw, pleading, "If you'll still have me." The guests were stunned. Some gasped in disapproval. Others clapped cautiously, their emotions pulled in conflicting directions. Amara let the silence drag, savoring the weight of every eye upon her. She glanced at Damien, broken, humbled, then toward the door where her mother had fled, cowardly and disgraced. This was her stage, her moment, her choice. She stepped forward, lifted the microphone again, and smiled faintly. "My husband," she said clearly, "isn't perfect. Neither am I." But perfection was never the point. Gasps, murmurs, a few sobs. She took Damien's hand, her grip firm. Love is about facing the ugliest truths and choosing each other anyway. The hall erupted in applause, some relieved, some bewildered, some scandalized. But it didn't matter. Amara had delivered her revenge, publicly humiliating her mother, forcing Damien to bear himself before the world. And still, she stood victorious beside him. Because revenge didn't always mean walking away. Sometimes the sweetest revenge was staying. The music swelled again, shaky at first, then steady as guests reclaimed the illusion of celebration. But beneath the glitter and laughter, everyone knew they had witnessed something raw, unforgettable. A wedding no one would ever forget. And as Amara danced with Damien, her lips near his ear, she whispered the final twist only he would hear. "From now on we play by my rules." A live wire. Guests forced smiles, their conversation strained, their glances darting toward Amara and Damien as though waiting for another explosion. Amara held Damien's hand firmly as they moved across the dance floor, their bodies swaying in rhythm. To outsiders, they were the radiant newlyweds, unshaken and untouchable. But inside, Damien's pulse hammered beneath her fingers. He knew the performance was hers to control now, and he was just an actor on her stage. Celeste hadn't returned. The absence of the mother of the bride hung heavy over the reception. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some speculated she'd fallen ill. Others, bolder, guessed at scandal. Amara didn't care what version the guests chose to believe. What mattered was that her mother had fled while she remained victorious, standing tall beside the man both of them had wanted. It was symbolic, and Amara reveled in it. Later in the bridal suite, Damien sat on the edge of the bed, his jacket discarded, his face pale. Amara stood before the mirror, carefully removing her earrings. "You didn't have to do that," Damien said quietly. She met his gaze in the mirror, her tone calm. "Didn't I? You humiliated your mother. You humiliated me." "No, Damien." She turned, her eyes sharp. "You humiliated yourself. I just provided the audience." He flinched. Amara walked toward him, her steps deliberate. "You thought betrayal would bury me. Instead, it made me stronger. And now you belong to me in a way you never did before." Her hand brushed his jaw, tender yet commanding. "You'll never forget tonight. Neither will she." Meanwhile, Celeste sat in her car outside the hotel, hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her heart raced, humiliation burning hotter than the wine in her veins. How dare Amara, how dare her daughter expose her like that? Strip her of dignity before society's eyes. Celeste's lips curled into a cold smile. Asterisk, she thinks she's won. But this game isn't over. Asterisk. The next morning, headlines hit the society columns. A wedding to remember. The Brooks Hale ceremony stuns guests with emotional confessions. Tears, truth, and triumph. Amara Brooks steals the spotlight at her wedding. The press, mercifully, framed it as an extraordinary testament to love's endurance. Public sympathy flooded in for Amara. She became an icon of grace under fire. The bride who faced betrayal yet stood unbroken. Her image spread across magazines, blogs, and television segments. Celeste, however, became a ghost in the narrative. Absent, shamed, forgotten. It enraged her. Damien spent the following days in silence, guilt gnawing at him. He worked from his home office, buried in meetings, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. But every evening he returned to Amara, tentative, subdued. Amara noticed the shift. He was careful now, careful with his words, his movements, his gaze. It was as if her vengeance had carved something out of him, leaving him raw and pliable. She didn't gloat aloud, but inside she savored it. One evening, as they dined in their penthouse, Amara's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Enjoying your victory? It won't last." See, Amara's lips curved faintly. Her mother had finally made her move. She set the phone aside, unbothered. "Tell me, Damien," she asked lightly, swirling her wine. "What would you do if your past came clawing back to ruin you?" He looked at her cautiously. "I'd stand by you." "Good," she murmured, sipping. "Because mine just might." 2 nights later, Celeste appeared at their door. Her hair was immaculate, her dress flawless, but her eyes carried venom. Damien stiffened as Amara opened the door, leaning casually against the frame. "Mother," Amara greeted coolly. "I thought you'd be hiding under a rock." Celeste's smile was brittle. "You think humiliating me in public makes you strong. But you forget, Amara. People like me don't stay buried. I have friends, allies, and I know secrets." Amara's gaze sharpened. "Secrets don't scare me anymore. I carry mine in the open. You, on the other hand, you choke on yours." Celeste's mask slipped, her composure cracking. "You don't understand the world you're stepping into. You'll regret crossing me." Amara leaned in, her voice soft but deadly. "The only thing I regret, Mother, is ever believing you loved me more than you loved yourself." Celeste faltered. For the first time, she seemed smaller. Damien stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Leave. You've done enough damage." Celeste's eyes flicked between them. Her daughter radiant and defiant, and the man she once thought she controlled, now standing with Amara. She saw her power slipping, and it terrified her. She turned sharply and walked away, her heels clicking like thunder. When the door closed, Damien exhaled shakily. She won't stop. Amara's eyes gleamed. Neither will I. That night, as Damien slept beside her, Amara lay awake, staring at the city lights beyond their window. She thought about revenge, about power, about the strange shape love could take when twisted by betrayal. Her life was no longer about fairy tales. It was about survival, control, writing her own story. And if her mother wanted war, Amara was ready. Because she hadn't just married a man. She had claimed her throne. And she wasn't stepping down. Celeste had always thrived on control. From her youth, when beauty first began to open doors, to the years she'd spent maneuvering through wealthy circles, she had mastered the art of bending others to her will. Losing that control to her own daughter was a wound she could not allow to fester. So she planned. While Amara and Damien enjoyed the glow of newlywed life, Celeste met quietly with old acquaintances, whispered in the ears of investors, and planted seeds of doubt. If she could not shame Amara publicly again, she would cut her down privately by attacking Damien's empire. One morning, Damien received a frantic call from his CFO. "Sir, there's movement among our board members. Someone's rallying for a vote of no confidence." Damien froze. "That's impossible." "It's not. Anonymous tips about questionable spending have surfaced. And some of the rumors, they're ugly." Damien's blood ran cold. He knew this wasn't coincidence. When he ended the call, Amara was watching him, her chin resting lightly on her hand. "Your face just went pale. Tell me," he explained, voice tight, every word dripping with dread. Amara listened calmly, then leaned back in her chair. "It's her. You can't know that." "Oh, I know," Amara said, her eyes sharp. "It reeks of her. Sabotage dressed up as concern. She's trying to make you vulnerable so she can make me crumble." Damien's fist clenched. She could ruin everything. Amara's lips curved faintly. "Only if we let her." That evening, Amara visited her mother's townhouse unannounced. Celeste opened the door, a glass of wine already in hand, her smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "So the cracks are showing, HM? My poor little bride," realizing her crown is made of paper. Amara stepped inside without invitation. "This ends now." Celeste laughed low and cold. "Ends? Oh, darling, this is just the beginning. You humiliated me in front of society. Now I'll strip you of the life you think you won. Damien will fall, and with him, so will you." Amara's gaze hardened. "You forget, Mother. I didn't marry Damien for money or protection. I married him because I know how to turn weakness into strength. Even betrayal." Celeste scoffed. "Such lofty words. Let's see how powerful you sound when the tabloids report his downfall and your so-called fairy tale wedding becomes a scandal." Amara leaned in, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "Try me, but know this. You'll never destroy me without destroying yourself. You think the world won't notice a mother conspiring against her daughter? They already pity you. Push harder, and they'll hate you." Celeste's expression faltered, just for a breath. Amara caught it and smiled. "I'll be watching," Amara whispered, then left. Days passed. The pressure on Damien's company intensified. Rumors spread faster than he could counter. Investors grew restless. But Amara had her own strategy. She called a press conference, not Damien, not his board, but her. Standing before flashing cameras, she spoke with poise. "My husband has faced whispers designed to tear him down," she said, her voice firm, eyes unwavering. "But I stand here not only as his wife, but as proof of resilience. Our marriage began with trials, but we've grown stronger. Those who spread lies about him underestimate what it means to fight beside someone, not against them. Her words electrified the media. Headlines shifted overnight. Damien wasn't painted as a scandalized CEO. He was framed as the husband of a fierce, loyal woman who had already weathered betrayal and triumphed. The public adored her even more. The board, shaken by the tidal wave of support, hesitated to act. Celeste watched the coverage on television, wine glass trembling in her hand. She had expected Amara to falter, to retreat. Instead, her daughter was rising higher, using every blow as a step upward. Fury burned through her veins. Asterisk, she's mine. I made her. How dare she outshine me? Asterisk. That night, Amara confronted Damien in their bedroom. You need to stop living like a man waiting for punishment, she told him, her tone fierce. You betrayed me, yes, but I chose to stay. That means you stand with me. Fully. No more cowering. No more letting her pull your strings. Damien looked at her, shame and longing in his eyes. How do you still want me after everything? Amara's answer was soft but cutting. Because leaving you would have been too easy. Staying, making you mine despite it all, that's power. For the first time in weeks, he kissed her with hunger, as though he understood at last what it meant to belong to her. But Celeste wasn't done. She appeared one evening at a gala, dressed in diamonds, her smile bright as flashbulbs followed her. When reporters asked about her daughter, she delivered her dagger with honeyed words. I only want Amara's happiness, Celeste said sweetly. But one has to wonder, how long can a marriage built on secrets truly last? The question rippled through the press like poison. When Amara saw the headlines the next morning, she didn't flinch. She only smiled. If she wants a war of whispers, I'll give her a war of revelations. And with that, Amara began preparing her final strike. The gala incident had been the spark. Celeste's words, how long can a marriage built on secrets truly last? Now echoed across tabloids and dinner parties. People speculated again. Doubt crept like ivy into every corner of Damien's world. But Amara didn't panic. She planned. If her mother wanted to play with whispers, Amara would roar with truth. Not the kind that weakened, but the kind that revealed who truly held power. Damien watched her warily as she stood at the window of their penthouse, city lights reflecting off her silk nightgown. You're too calm, he said finally. She's attacking us publicly, and you look like you've already won. Amara turned, her eyes gleaming. That's because I have. How? She walked to him, brushing her fingers along his jaw. Because she still believes this is about you, about money, about prestige. But it isn't. It's about her and me, a mother who can't stand that her daughter has surpassed her. Damien frowned. And how do you beat someone like that? Amara's smile was sharp. By showing her and everyone else that she's irrelevant. 2 nights later, Amara made her move. She invited the city's most influential figures to a charity gala of her own, an event in honor of young women pursuing education and independence. The theme, asterisk, breaking cycles, building futures. Asterisk, it was more than an event. It was a stage. Damien stood beside her as guests applauded her speech, praising her for using her platform to uplift others. Cameras flashed. Journalists scribbled notes. Amara shone, radiant, confident, untouchable. And then she unveiled her surprise. On the massive screen behind her, photographs began to play. Not tabloid scandals, not gossip fodder, but curated, undeniable images. Her mother's trail of manipulations over the years. Business deals soured because of Celeste's greed. Friendships shattered by her envy. Lovers ruined by her deceit. It wasn't salacious, it was factual, documented, presented like evidence in a courtroom. The room fell silent as the final image appeared. A younger Amara, standing beside her mother at an event years ago, eyes hopeful, smile wide. And next to it, Amara now, stronger, self-possessed, transformed. Her voice rang out. Tonight isn't about tearing down. It's about freeing ourselves from the patterns that bind us. I chose not to be defined by betrayal. I chose strength. And I will continue to choose it, no matter who tries to hold me back. The applause was thunderous. Celeste, standing near the back of the room, froze. Every eye turned to her, not with admiration, but with judgment. She had been exposed not by petty scandal, but by her daughter's undeniable truth. After the event, reporters swarmed Amara. Headlines the next morning blazed. Amara Brooks Hale, from betrayal to brilliance. Daughter outshines mother in stunning display of strength. Celeste Brooks fallen socialite? The tide had turned completely. Celeste wasn't feared or envied anymore. She was pitted, forgotten. And for someone like her, that was worse than death. At home that night, Damien took Amara's hands, his voice hoarse. You didn't just silence her. You destroyed her. Amara studied him quietly. No, Damien, I freed myself from her. She destroyed herself. He looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. And us? After everything I did, after what I let happen with her, why didn't you leave me? Amara's expression softened, though her eyes remained fierce. Because leaving would have made me her victim. Staying made me her conqueror. Damien swallowed hard, emotion thick in his throat. I don't deserve you. Amara's lips curved in the faintest smile. No, you don't. But you're mine now, entirely. And that's enough. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though afraid she might vanish. But she didn't vanish. She stayed. Not because she forgave blindly. Not because she forgot. But because she had rewritten the story on her own terms. Meanwhile, Celeste retreated from the spotlight. Her invitations dried up, her allies scattered. Once the queen of society, she now wandered her gilded cage, muttering about betrayal, nursing her bitterness alone. Her daughter had taken everything she valued most, admiration, power, legacy, and left her with nothing but the echo of her own schemes. Weeks later, Amara and Damien strolled hand in hand through a garden, paparazzi cameras clicking in the distance. The world saw a power couple, stronger for having survived fire. But beneath it all, Amara knew the truth. She had faced betrayal not once, but twice, from the man she loved and the mother who birthed her. She had chosen not to walk away. She had chosen to claim her place, to mold her pain into something unshakable. She wasn't the broken bride anymore. She wasn't the betrayed daughter. She was the woman who had turned her wedding into a battlefield and emerged crowned, not by love alone, but by her own indomitable will. And as Damien kissed her hand, devotion in his eyes, Amara whispered to herself, asterisk checkmate, asterisk. The city buzzed with Amara's name. Invitations poured in from talk shows, podcasts, and glossy magazines. Her inbox overflowed with young women sharing how her speech had inspired them to walk away from toxic relationships, to demand better, to choose themselves. Damien watched it all with a mixture of awe and guilt. He saw how the world adored her, not as his wife, not as the daughter of Celeste Brooks, but as Amara, a force unto herself. And each time a headline sang her praises, a quiet fear gripped him. What if she realizes she no longer needs me? One evening, as they dressed for another charity dinner, Damien fastened the clasp of Amara's necklace. His fingers brushed her collarbone, lingering as though the contact could anchor her to him. You're breathtaking, he murmured. Amara met his eyes in the mirror. Flattery won't erase the past. He flinched but nodded. I know. That's why I want to build a new future with you. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy. She turned then, her gaze searching. And if I never forgive you completely, Damien swallowed hard. Then I'll love you anyway, even if all I have is the chance to stand beside you as you shine. For For the first time, Amara saw something in him she hadn't before. Not arrogance, not entitlement, but humility. And it unsettled her more than his betrayal ever had. Meanwhile, Celeste spiraled. Her phone, once buzzing with invitations, sat silent. The mirror reflected a face that had once been worshipped, now lined with bitterness. She called old allies, only to be met with polite excuses or cold indifference. But Celeste was not one to fade quietly. "No one discards me," she muttered, pacing her mansion like a caged lioness. "Not my daughter. Not anyone." And so she plotted again. The chance came during a lavish wedding hosted by an old society friend. Amara and Damien arrived arm in arm, cameras flashing, eyes tracking their every move. They looked untouchable, golden, a couple reborn. Celeste appeared halfway through the evening, uninvited, but dressed to kill. Gasps rippled through the ballroom as she approached Amara, glass of champagne in hand. "My darling girl," she purred loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "You've grown into such a performer. Almost makes one forget the lies beneath the surface." The crowd stiffened, waiting. Amara's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with something sharper. She smiled coolly. "Mother, how unexpected. I thought you'd retired from society." Celeste's eyes glittered with venom. "Society may have short memories, but I don't. You may have painted me as a villain, but everyone here knows where you came from. You're mine, Amara. You'll always be mine." The words, meant as a curse, fell flat. People didn't look at Celeste with fear. They looked at her with pity. Amara tilted her head, voice like silk. "You're right. I came from you, but I didn't become you. And that's why they applaud me and not you." Laughter broke out. Not cruel, but final. The ballroom had chosen sides, and Celeste was the ghost at her own funeral. Damien slipped his hand into Amara's. "Shall we?" Together, they turned their backs on Celeste, leaving her stranded in the spotlight she once ruled. For the first time, she truly looked small. Later that night, Amara sat on their balcony, the city glittering below. Damien joined her, silent for a long while. "You ended her tonight," he said finally. Amara shook her head. "She ended herself. I just let people see the truth." He studied her profile, lit by moonlight. "And us? Is the truth that we survived, or that we're still broken?" Amara was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "Both. But survival is its own kind of power, and broken things can still be beautiful." He reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. Far across town, Celeste sat in her dim mansion. Phone ringing unanswered, glass of wine trembling in her grasp. She had made her last play and lost. Her empire of influence lay in ashes, and all she could do was choke on the smoke. The weeks after Celeste's collapse in society were strangely quiet. Invitations still poured in for Amara, but she declined most of them. She wasn't chasing attention anymore. She had already won. Instead, she spent her mornings walking through the city with Damien. No cameras, no scripts, just two people trying to rediscover who they were when no one else was watching. One morning, as autumn leaves fluttered across the park path, Damien stopped suddenly. "Marry me again," he said. Amara blinked. "We're already married." "Not like that night," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Not under shadows. Not with betrayal hanging over us. Marry me again. This time with nothing between us but the truth." Her instinct was to laugh. And yet, when she saw his eyes, she realized he meant it. His pride was gone. His certainty too. What stood before her was a man stripped bare, asking not for forgiveness, but for a second chance. And against all odds, her heart softened. 2 months later, in a quiet garden surrounded by only a handful of trusted friends, they stood again at the altar. No reporters, no lavish spectacle, just vows spoken under a canopy of golden leaves. Damien's voice trembled as he began. I once lost you before I truly had you. I let weakness and temptation define me, and it almost cost me everything. But standing here, I vow never again to treat your heart as anything less than sacred. I will fight for you, honor you, and love you, even when you cannot love me back. Amara's eyes glistened as she replied, I am not naive. I know what betrayal feels like. I know what it costs, but I also know the strength it gave me and the power of choosing my own ending. Today, I choose not to be broken. I choose us. I vow to build a marriage not on perfection, but on truth, even when the truth hurts, especially then. Their hands intertwined, trembling yet steady. For the first time, their marriage wasn't gilded with illusion. It was raw, imperfect, real. As they kissed, sealing their vows, Amara caught sight of a figure lingering beyond the hedges. Celeste, her mother, stood half-hidden, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes burning with something between fury and longing. For a moment their gazes locked. Amara's heart gave a painful twist. There was no triumph in seeing Celeste so diminished, only sorrow for what could never be repaired. She lifted her chin, silently telling her mother, Asterisk, this is where your power ends. This is where mine begins, asterisk. Celeste turned away, shoulders hunched, swallowed by the shadows of the garden. And just like that, she was gone. That night, Damien and Amara sat together by the fire, glasses of wine untouched. You didn't have to stay, he murmured. You could have had anyone. You could have ruled alone. Amara leaned into him, her voice steady. Leaving would have made me free, but staying made me powerful. I didn't stay because I needed you. I stayed because I chose you. Damien's eyes closed, relief and devotion etched into every line of his face. Years later, when people spoke of Amara and Damien Hale, they didn't whisper about scandal. They spoke of resilience, of a couple who had been forged in fire and emerged unbreakable. The betrayal remained part of their story, but not its ending. Instead, it was the crucible that had reshaped them both. And whenever Amara looked at Damien, her husband or partner, her conquered and reclaimed love, she remembered her own words that had started it all. Asterisk, I will turn this ceremony into payback. Asterisk, she had done more than that. She had turned it into rebirth.